Hi, I'm Martin from Lonehead, and I'm watching Channa 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 podcast. Don't miss it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of my podcast. We have a very special guest today joining all the way from Scotland. We got Martin Jenkins of Lonehead. Hi, Martin.
Hi there, Channa.
How are you doing this morning?
Very well. Yeah, it's a nice morning here. A little bit drizzly, but it's nice and fresh. So looking forward to the day.
Right. So, how is the situation? You're in Glasgow, right?
Just near Glasgow, yes, about 15 miles from Glasgow.
Right. So, how is all the situation with all this pandemic and stuff? How is it going there?
I suppose if you look at it in terms of the whole world, I think we're doing fairly well. The vaccination rates are really high. I think it's 90+% of people have been vaccinated. So that's the good side of it. The bad side of it, everything's sort of went back to normal. So therefore, COVID rates are going up again.
Right.
And, there's a little bit of pressure on the health services. So it's a sort of mixed situation, but it's positive in the sense that people have had vaccinations and are able to go about their lives fairly normally. There's still some restrictions in place, but they're fairly minor. So I suppose uh, in a global picture, we're probably quite lucky just now.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, when did you last perform live, Martin?
Well, luckily we done a little festival about 2 weeks ago. I think called Prest Fest in a town near us. It's called Prestwick, so they have a Prest Festival, and it's just the sort of bands over the weekend. So that was our first gig in probably a year and a half. So there was a lot of pressure on us to get it right. We'd been rehearsing quite a long time. We've been rehearsing since the summer, which was great. That was us getting together after the whole lockdown, the whole pandemic. So that was exciting. And that was the first gig, and it went really well. The highlight was probably the organisers approaching us and telling us we needed to turn it down a bit. So we stopped a couple of songs early, Channa, because it was a bit of a vibe killer. But the audience loved it, so that was good, and we were quite happy with our performance.
Right. I mean, asking a rock band to tone it down is not very
Well,
rock and roll, right?
I'm looking at your t-shirt, and I think the Megadeth t-shirt, and you understand what I'm talking about. There's a certain thing, drum. I mean, we're not an out and out sort of really hard rock band, but we do rock. We range from sort of punkiness through to sort of pop rock or indie rock. Uh, and you can. It's not so much about a volume thing. It's an energy thing. You want to play. The drummer wants to perform, and you can't really tone that down. And it was a strange thing because after all, it was a music festival. There was a lot of rock bands on, but we had a good time.
Right. I mean, I think the first step is actually to have the shows, right? And then eventually you can get to whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, right?
Oh, that's right. That's right. We're back out again. Actually, next Friday, this coming Friday, will that be the 24th? We're playing in a venue in Glasgow, Ivory Blacks. So I think there'll be no restrictions on volume. It'll be quite loud. We're working with a band called the Swamp Born Assassins. They play a sort of American style blues rock. So that'll be exciting. So that's next Friday. So we're really looking forward to that, and we don't need to worry about the volume.
Right. So Lonehead is a trio, right? So
Yes.
who's in the band?
Well, myself, I play bass, and I'm the lead singer. There's Uncle Jim. We call him Uncle Jim Kilt. Not Kilt, but Kilt. He's the lead guitarist. He's a fantastic guitarist, virtuoso guitarist. So he plays guitar and does some backing vocals. And we've got Mark Brown, who plays drums, but also does backing vocals as well. So that's the setup. It's quite a simple, direct setup. It's reminiscent of bands like Cream and the Police, the Jam. Really quite direct sort of 3-piece sound. So everybody's got to work really hard.
Right. So you kind of have that punk formula, right, for the band?
A little bit. There's there's a thread of that goes through it. Yeah. Although there's other things come into the mix. We call it, I suppose, if we're talking to people, we would probably say it's alternative rock, because that's quite a wide thing. It covers lots of different things. There's a bit of punk in there. Power pop, I don't know, power pop like the Cars, Elvis Costello, the punk thing, new wave. There's a lot of that in there as well. But, there's a lot of the Who, Cream, people like that. There's guitar solos. We're not scared of a guitar solo. So they're happening as well.
So Martin, before we talk about the band, tell me a little bit about you, and tell me a little bit about your childhood and what's your earliest memory of music.
Well, my transition into sort of rock music was a strange one. As a little boy, I always sang in choirs. I was always involved in the school show. I don't know if do you know Oliver the musical?
Oliver Twist?
Yeah, the musical Oliver. It was a 60s. Anyway, I played Oliver in the school show.
I know. There's a part there, right? Something like a bit more, sir, or something like asking for the food, right?
please, sir, can I have some more?
Some more,
that's the one. Yeah, but there was a musical, a Lionel Bart musical. I think it was written in the 60s. There's a movie, so it was a musical version of Oliver, and I played the part. So I done things like that, and I was in the choir at the church, and as a little boy, I played French horn. I don't know, orchestral instrument, French horn sort of thing. And then I got to sort of early teens, maybe 12, and I kind of ignored all that. I kind of thought that didn't count, and a few things happened. I heard a few records, the early Police records. I heard early kind of Black Sabbath records, Rush, 10cc. The first record I actually bought was ELO, believe it or not, the greatest hits of ELO, which is it's fabulous. So things like that were really influencing me, and the kids in the street started a band. It's one of those cliches, our friends, we're going to start a band. So instantly I was a singer because, well, you can sing, and everybody was learning to play guitar, and nobody wanted to play the bass.
Right.
So I started to play the bass. And it was funny at that point, I kind of ignored everything that happened before. I didn't see that as the same thing. I didn't see that as music. Whereas now, I think with kids, they maybe possibly get more tuition and guidance, and you would see the whole picture. But it was almost like I was starting again in rock music. Right. And round about that time, I might have been 13, 14, I seen my first ever gig that I went to see was in the Glasgow Apollo, which doesn't exist anymore. And you'll know the name of the band. I seen Iron Maiden with Paul Di'Anno as the singer, before Bruce Dickinson, Paul Di'Anno. Right. And it was first gig I'd ever seen. And I'm not a massive fan of a great band, obviously, great band. But at the time, I was completely blown away. I couldn't believe it. And that was the curse. That was me. I had to do that. I wanted to do that. I wanted to sing. I wanted to play in a band. And so that was it. That's what really got me. And these elements, the records I'd heard, starting a little kind of pretend band with my friends, and then seeing Iron Maiden, and those things came together, and I've been cursed ever since.
So what are the bands you were in before Lonehead started, or were there other bands before that?
Yeah. I played probably those 2 or 3 significant bands. There was a band in the 80s called Carmen with a K, after the old there's some cars, old Volkswagen cars called Carmen. We we done quite well locally, really popular. We got some interest from some of the big publishers, Warner Music, and it kind of petered out. In the 90s, I was with a band, Movie Culture. Again, released a couple of singles and done fairly well. Probably the most significant thing was early 2000s or late 90s. I was working with a Glasgow label called Blue Ice. I was at that point, I was a songwriter. I was also an artist. I was a songwriter. I was involved in production, programming. I was working with songwriters and singers, collaborating. I had my own band, my own act called Spike. Went to London, worked with the guy. Oh God, I can't remember. It was Al Clay. He worked at Stereophonics and Pink and all these people. He mixed some of the tracks. I was working with the guy that worked with Wet, 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 and so it was all kind of happening, and it was all good, and money invested in me. I was, and it just, what happened was, it wasn't so much that that I was rejected by the industry or anything like that. It just the actual label itself went bust. It was a little bit mishandled. And so that actually has led to where I'm now in the early sort of 2000s, kind of get out of music a little bit. So I'm teaching guitar, teaching music, but then that's when Lonehead really started. That's when we sort of built all this thing up. And a few different incarnations. Lonehead itself is only a few years old, but the beginnings of it were back then when I was working with people like Jim, and that's sort of built up.
Right. So this you mentioned like the late 90s, right? So
Sure.
I grew up in Sri Lanka. I'm a Sri Lankan, so
yes,
I grew up in Sri Lanka. So those days, one of the biggest influences or thing that I was listening was all the Britpop that came from UK, right? Oasis, Blur, Pulp, Ocean Colour Scene, and everything. I mean, I think you kind of lived through that. Were you like producing? Doing like programming and stuff, and during that time, right? Like
yes. Well, I was probably at the time that was happening. I was working in a band, the band Movie Culture, and I was making music. Just post that, then that probably maybe 97, but it was still going on, I suppose. Yeah, that's when I started that period of time, and Spike was quite, I suppose, loosely a sort of Britpop sound. It was definitely an indie pop, indie rock, indie pop thing, quirky. I would talk in the songs. It was quite sort of produced, and there was samples flying in there along with live music, and it was good. It was interesting, but yeah, definitely of its time and part of that sound.
Yeah, I mean that became massive because I mean everything I was seeing those days were all these bands plus the the other pop artists like Spice Girls and all that came, right? So it was a very big scene, and but as it got bigger, and then it eventually
yes.
Down,
I briefly worked in a record shop just in the mid-90s, and it was at the point where Blur and Oasis
the two singles,
the singles. And it was and the Spice Girls were going about then, and it was incredible. It was like being in a burger bar. It was just like people were buying them left, right, and centre. It was just crazy to think what the industry is now. It's completely changed compared to back then. It's but it was a good time. The music was, a lot of the bands were really good, and Blur and Oasis they're two fabulous bands. You know, I liked them both.
Yeah, I think that particular scenario, I think Blur actually came number one, right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah. Country House, wasn't it?
Yeah, Country House, yes. There is this music, there is this documentary in Netflix now called This Is Pop.
Yes.
And one of the episodes is about Britpop, how it started, and they feature that. Yeah, it's a great.
Yeah, I've seen it. Fantastic.
Yeah. So Martin, Lonehead, what do you mean by Lonehead?
Good question. You mean the meaning of the name?
Yes.
Right. Well, there's a couple of strands to it, Channa. The first thing was, in my when I was working with Spike, that's the period when I was working as a producer and a programmer and working with other writers. I had a song with my band called Denny Lonehead. Right now, Denny Lonehead is a place in Scotland that's quite famous here because there are a lot of UFO sightings there. Right, so that's just a random. That's what the song was about, Denny Lonehead, and I made a sort of character called Denny Lonehead.
Right.
I made it into a name, Denny Lonehead, and he was a UFO investigator. That was the song. It was a kind of daft, quirky song, you know. So we thought that would be a good name for the band, and we thought, that's a bit long, Denny. So Lonehead. So also Jim in the band is from that area. And Lonehead in Scotland, there's lots of Loneheads in Scotland because Lonehead means the lane head, the top of the lane, the top of the hill. You know, that's what it means. It's the top. So we thought, that's quite good, the top of the hill. You know, we can do, you know. And then also Lonehead kind of, we thought might mean single-minded, determined. You know, so it was a combination of those factors, and then we stuck with the name. The other big factor was also there's a Google search thing. So you're always, you do come up with great names, and you discover that somebody, and I don't know, the Philippines or Sri Lanka has got it already, or it could be Canada, it could be America. So you've got to have something that is uniquely yours. And luckily, Lonehead was uniquely yours as well. So that was the clincher. Once we discovered that the name meant a little bit to us, it was kind of Scottish in a way. It was associated with some music we had made before. And then obviously you type it into the search engine and it doesn't come up as anybody else's. Because we were actually called, Lonehead were called the Halos for a few years. And we played in Scotland as the Halos, and we actually put out a couple of really quite low level singles, a couple of singles, and a live album. But the problem with the Halos is if you go and type in the Halos into Google, you'll find a lot of bands called the Halos. And in fact, there was a doo-wop 50s doo-wop singing group who actually had lots of hit records. So that was it. We thought we need to change. So that was when we went for Lonehead, and and that's it. And we've stuck with it, and it's worked quite well. We've got some great artwork. We love the logo. That was an artist in New Zealand done that for us, and he still does a lot of our artwork for the singles. And I think it's worked well for us. We've got a big backdrop, the Lonehead, and the logo. Well, yeah, we quite like it. We're quite happy with it. But that's where it came from.
Right. So this is the logo with the head, right? Like
yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting the UFO sighting.
Yeah, they call it they call it the Bonnie Bridge Triangle, and Denny Lonehead is just near to Bonnie Bridge. I think there was as usually is the case. I think there was an RAF, Royal Air Force airfield not too far away. So probably most of it was to do with that. But yeah, there was quite a lot of conspiracy theories about the area. And it got a lot of press at the time when I originally wrote the song. There was a lot of press about that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Last year there were a lot of sort of anticipation, especially when Trump was leaving the office, that he would put out more this alien, stuff, right? The classified stuff. But it didn't really happen, although there was a lot of anticipation about it, right?
Yeah, they did put out a report, but yeah, it wasn't very.
Right.
Yeah, it was just. I think it just said that there were some things they couldn't explain, and that was really it. Well, we kind of knew that, didn't we? Yeah. So.
Right. So, Martin, I've been listening to some of your songs, especially even today. While I was doing a walk, I put all your, Spotify. I was just listening, and then this song, you have a 2020 album, right? Wonderful, and how to get it. I think so. One of the songs, I think this is probably your first song, Jazz Killer.
Yes.
So
yes.
I could kind of relate to that song, because what I felt is that it was talking about someone just putting his passion aside and just going with the society, just whatever the life throws, just try to just just be normal type of that sort of a feeling I got when I was listening to that song. And so is that what you're trying to say in that song?
That one, it's a sort of defiant song. It's saying it's saying it's easy to criticize, but it's harder to do things. And I think on the internet and at the time there was a little bit of kind of not quite trolling or anything like that, but people were being a bit critical of us. So the song was about that, saying, well, you can shoot me down, you can say these things, but we'll come back stronger. We'll be yourself. And I suppose the jazz killer thing, that's just referring to somebody being a fun killer or a vibe killer.
Yeah.
So that's it. So it's about strength of purpose and being yourself.
Right. Also like bus killer.
Yes. That's exactly it. That's it. That's what it means. Yeah.
Right. So it's quite coincidence that we are talking today, and your new single was released yesterday, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So
Swimming upstream.
Yeah, tell me about the song.
Well, the song was written in lockdown. Most of it was recorded in lockdown. We managed to get Mark playing on the drums a few weeks ago, and mixed by a guy called Stuart McCready, who's worked with the Fratellis and Blue Nile, Texas, you name it. So we feel really happy with the result. The song itself, the sound of the song now, it's probably got a sort of 60s, maybe a little bit of Britpop in there, vibe. And I wrote the lyrics for this one, and at the time I thought it was really quite a sad song. I felt it was sort of a bit of a downer, a bit negative. But a few weeks after I'd written the lyrics, I started to think about it, and I thought, no, it's not. There is melancholy, but it is positive. It's saying you want to go back to the best times in your life and get strength from that to pick up and move forward. And it's saying I'm swimming upstream, which is a bit of a frustration. You're swimming against the tide. But the fact is, you're still here doing it. You're fighting. You're trying to move on. So it's a little bit melancholy, but there is this a positive, uplifting message in it. So yeah, that's really what it's about. We're really pleased with it, and so far it's early days, but the response has been really, really nice. People have seemed to responded well to it and seem to quite like it. So yeah, we're fairly hopeful.
Yeah, I felt like it's a very encouraging song, especially during this pandemic.
Yeah, and it's funny that's not what I felt when I wrote it, because I was probably quite sad, but that came through in the lyrics. That was obviously there. That don't give up. Even though you're swimming upstream, keep going. And it says things like, I'll fake it till I make it. That's in the lyric. I love my life, but I hate this time. That's another lyric, which is, again, it's sad, but it's you love your life, you want to hold on, you want to keep moving on. So I think the sound that developed is upbeat and quite positive, and I think it ultimately is quite an encouraging, hopeful song. So hopefully, I hope people feel that when they listen to it.
Right. So Martin, you mentioned about the gig you played like week ago or so, right? Festival, but tell me a little bit about any other memorable gigs that you performed, of course, before the pandemic. So
sure. Well, we used to play a lot around Scotland. We would travel to the north of Scotland, to Aberdeen, to Inverness, across to Edinburgh. But probably the most fun we've had was we would occasionally do biker rallies, and they were always fun. They were always fun because we used to do one. I wouldn't even try it. You might understand. They called it the Wobbly Ghoulies Biker Rally.
Right.
That's true. That's what they called it. The Wobbly Ghoulies. I don't know if I can say that on your show, but that's what they called it. And we done that 2 or 3 times. It was quite a big biker rally in Yorkshire, in England, and it was always just chaotic, because I don't think I've ever seen people get quite so drunk. They would be. I just. So they were really memorable nights, because you'd meet the biker guys, the chaps. They'd all be hanging around about lunchtime, drinking an awful lot of Jack Daniels and Newcastle ale, drinking away, and they would be really drunk at that point. But then you'd meet them or see them as you were playing your last set at 1 a.m, and there they were, full tilt, dancing away, jumping up and down. You think, and you're just looking at them as you're singing, thinking, how is that possible? How is that possible? So yeah, they were probably those rallies were the most exciting gigs that we've done before. Now we're looking forward to trying to get into some good venues, and really focusing on just sort of putting across these new songs. So it's a slightly different thing now, what we're trying to do. But yeah, we did do an awful lot of gigs, but those stick in my memory.
Right. So you also had a lot of your songs. You had like airplay in other countries as well, right?
Yes. We've all over the world, America, Canada, Australia, South Africa, all across Europe, and a lot in obviously the UK, Ireland. Probably the best or the widest airplay we've had is with the last single, which was "Turn Yourself Around." That was really good. We get played really widely with that, and we managed to get onto Planet Rock, which is a big station here. It's Bauer Network. It's a big commercial station. And we get some BBC airplay here as well, which is quite good. So we're hoping that with this one we can even push it a little bit further and make some new friends. That's what we're hoping. But it's been really good. The response has been great. We felt before we put out the album in 2020 that the music had been sitting on the shelf for a wee bit too long for all sorts of reasons. But yeah, we felt it had been on the shelf, and we decided at that point, once you get the album out, and we'd written and recorded to a sort of good demo level these tracks we were putting out, and we just decided, no, we're just going to put these out, put them out every 6-7 weeks, and really get behind it and try and make as many new friends as we can, and sort of build up alliances and audience, and just enjoy yourself. Because I think before we felt with the first album that we're waiting for this perfect set of circumstances to put it out, waiting for some more money or some, and we've decided, no, look, life's too short. Let's get all this music out and meet people, let people hear it, get it on the radio, whatever, and shows like this and meeting people like you. That's just wonderful. That's what it should be about. So it's been a big gear shift for us, but a positive one, and it's made such a difference, So we're hoping with this one that we can build on what we've done with Turn Yourself Around and reach even more people. Fingers crossed.
Right. So last year, Martin, I actually started this podcast because of the pandemic, because I couldn't go to shows anymore. Because so you can see the all the lanyards on the back. That's all my concerts that I've been to. And then along the way that, as I started interviewing bands, and then somehow I got connected with Catherine Campbell of CJC. And I don't know how she got to know me, but somehow she reached out to me, and then we started talking, and then she started introducing me especially a lot of bands from Scotland and UK. And so I know that you work with her. So how long you've been working with her? How is that help you with your band?
Catherine is just such a music enthusiast, probably like yourself, I'm sure. And her energy is second to none. She she just loves music, and she loves being involved in music. She loves to promote music, and I think I would go so far to say that we couldn't really do it without her. She doesn't, it's not the only person we work with, but her energy and her reliability has meant it's really given us a lot of momentum. She's really helped a lot. I mean, we did work with her in a couple of occasions back about 4 or 5 years ago with, I think, Jazz Killer, or maybe Monkey Boots, one of these tracks, a couple of those tracks, and she's done a good job. But she's been working consistently with this batch of material since this year, really, all the singles that have been going out. And she's done a great job. And again, helped us just meet new people, make new contacts, and just get our music out there. It's great. It really is good. So no, we'll be hopefully continuing to work with her as part of the picture. We also have we also work with iOcco Music, which is a Glasgow music label. They help out in some degree with the productions, and we've got somebody there, Nick Prentice, who does some press for us as well, and that helps too. So we've got them, and Ian Johnson there helps fund a little bit of work for us in terms of promotions and things. So we're quite lucky that we've got people who believe in the band and are there to help us. And iOcco have been great. They've been behind this whole campaign. But no, we're big fans of Catherine, and you and I wouldn't be talking if it wasn't for Catherine, I'm sure. So that's fantastic. Yeah.
Because what I started seeing is like it's like sort of like a sort of underground network of all these PR guys, and then DJs, the radio people, and podcasters and artists, and it's like becoming like a community, right?
I definitely feel that, and I think the reason that's happening is because I think I can only where are you based, Channa? Are you in Sri Lanka? Philippines? Yeah, right. I mean, I can only talk for what happens in the UK, but that what you're describing, it definitely is what's happening in the UK, and I think the reason for that here is because what used to be local radio stations aren't particularly local anymore, because they've all been bought up by huge corporations, the Bauer Network or Global, I think Global Music they're called, and that's fine, but that they don't really reflect what's going on locally in the music scene or a lot of other things. So there has been a big growth in community radio, independent podcasters, all sorts of things, because there's a need for it. People want it, and I think for people to express themselves and put that the product out there, it's great for the bands. It's great. So yeah, I think it's a great thing, and I think it's a reaction to, as I say, those stations just moving further and further away from everyone and not really reflecting anything that's particularly local. We've got a station here, Radio Clyde, and it's a great station, and it does sort of local stuff to a degree in terms of big charity events. It will do local sport, football, things like that. But they would never play a local. The only way they'd play a local band is if the band suddenly gets signed in London and has a hit, and then they go, "Oh, there's a local," So it's not really supporting music in that way, and it's all became a bit like that. So I think this community that you're describing is definitely happened here, and it's refreshing. It's really, really good, and people are listening.
Right. So Martin, with the new song and what's upcoming for Lonehead, what are you looking forward?
Well, we've got obviously Swimming Upstream is just out. The next single is a song called Jump Back, and that's out at the end of, I don't have a date for you, but it's the end of October. That will take us probably the last release this year, and then we're hoping to do another couple of singles at the beginning of the year, which will build up towards the next album release, which will be May. So that's the plan. We'll set out a plan for that, and Catherine will be involved with that, and obviously the label will be involved. So we're hoping to sort of just keep the momentum going and build up. In terms of live, we are just in talks with all sorts of people, other bands, different promoters, to try and get behind some live events. So that hopefully will start to kind of, the diary will start to fill up a little bit there. We'll look at the just at target events moving right into the new year. So fingers crossed. We've got a good show next Friday, but we're looking for a lot more.
Right. I mean, I'm also cheering from here because, you know, in the Philippines, we have been in lockdown for until now. So we don't have any concerts or anything yet, no live events or anything. But
are you still completely in lockdown?
just recently, I think the restrictions were relaxed a little bit, so it's kind of, you know, we can go out, and but the problem for me is there's no music anywhere, so that's the sad thing. So when I see there's concerts happening in UK and, you know, in England, I think there was like Bloodstock Festival a few months back, August, there was a big festival that happened, and now you're talking about another festival. So it just gives me hope that eventually things will be normal here as well. So looking forward to that, actually.
Yeah, I hope so. It has to happen eventually. People can't live like that forever, and it is difficult, and you can understand why there needs to be lockdowns. But it's not a good thing for anybody's mental health, and
Yeah,
people need to get together, and people need the arts. They need live music. They need theatre. They need nightclubs. They need bars. They need all that. You know, it's necessary. So yeah, hopefully things will move on. You know, I mean, it's not definitely weaving back to normal here, but it's not. The story's not over yet. I think there's could be a few twists and turns yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's always like, you know, you have to lock down because of COVID cases, and then when it settles, then people want to open it up, and then it just keeps on going, right? So yeah. So anyway, so Martin, what's your message to the viewers of this podcast and listeners?
The message. Well, the message is if you're somewhere that's locked down, hang in there. And if you need to listen to some music in the meantime, tune into Lonehead, or tune into this podcast and listen to us talking about Lonehead. Yeah, check us out.
Right. Anybody you want to shout out to?
Well, Catherine Campbell already shouted out to her. Big thank you to iOcco Music, Nick Prentice, Ian Johnson, and obviously, yeah, big shout out to my band for working so hard and yeah, keeping going. So big shout out to Lonehead, iOcco Music, and Catherine Campbell at CGC Promotions. And you, Channa, big shout out to you.
Right. So, Martin, thanks for joining this podcast. I really enjoy talking to you, and I do really enjoy your music. That's why I wanted to have you on the show. So, looking forward to your new music, and all the best with your plans.
That's very kind, Channa, and I've really enjoyed talking to you. And it's been it's been a joy being on the show. Thank you very much.
Right. So tell everyone lastly how they can follow you, your band, and how they can listen to your music.
Sure. Well, Lonehead, Lonehead, Lonehead. You type that into Google. There's a website, lonehead.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and all the streaming platforms, especially Spotify. We've got a good presence there. So the usual places you can find us, YouTube as well. So yeah, just type in Lonehead, you'll find us there.
Right. So Martin, have a great day ahead. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Channa, and good luck. All the best.
Thank you.